way it was last time.
Yeah. And then we're going live.
Not always the case.
So Zoom has changed things on Facebook and we're all aware of it. Welcome, everybody. I thought it was going to take a few extra minutes or whatever. So it's always, it's that thing, got to keep my brain working here and being aware of things. So welcome, everybody. I am Brenda B. Bailey. This is the Theta Power Hour. And as always, every Wednesday, which by the way, will change starting in May. We're going to do every other Wednesday, but we're finishing up April with a bang with Miss Susan Trumpler, who I will introduce y'all to. And I always say the beautiful format of this is that I know really amazing, influential experts who have just zones of genius to share with you. So take notes. And as always, like, comment, and share. It's always very helpful for myself as well as my guest to hear like what you found, what was your aha, what did you find interesting, and tag people in if you feel like that this is something that they'll benefit from, which they always will. You just have to figure out which friends you want to tag. So let's go ahead and then as always, we will finish with doing a little bit of theta healing. And that means, Susan, that you get to cue them in on when they get to say yes. She didn't know that before that. She's like, wait a minute, what did I just agree to? No, I'm
always open.
So we're going to just do this. So yeah, Facebook has really changed everything up. So we're just going to really love this. So Zoom is, so we're going hold on. Let's just, I'm going to go ahead and close it up because it's doing something weird and I'll bring it back up. So let's go ahead and get started. Sorry, guys, y'all get to look at me guy and they go, what is going on here? So, and thank you, Susan, for your patience. So let me introduce my featured guest. It's Susan Trumpler. She is the founder of Unstoppable Women in Business and is an international speaker, coach, podcaster, and author of the upcoming book, Sell Like a Boss: How to Turn Sales into Your Superpower. She dedicates her time and efforts to eradicating the phrase, I hate sales. I love the one also that like sales is a 4-letter word, from the vocabulary of women business owners. The Success Collaborative, her flagship hybrid coaching program, is her pride and joy. And she dedicates her time to creating customized success roadmaps for each member and then invites them into an intimate community of like-minded peers to implement their plans and watch their revenues soar. Welcome, Susan.
It is so good to be here with you, Brenda B. Bailey. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh my goodness. I know. And you're like, oh. I always have to laugh, and I'm sure that this is the same. You hear your bio and you go, wow, that gal sounds great. I need to meet her. And it's like, oh,
oh, that was me.
So I love that. And of course, when it's a well-written bio, which that was, it's always nice to hear. I always hear from people, and it's the one thing that I will just say that I'd say a lot to my guests, especially if they're newer to speaking. It's like, I'm sorry, but you have to get uncomfortable and brag about yourself on your bio.
It's very uncomfortable. And yet, like you said, when you listen to it, you're like, wow, I have done something with my life. That's good.
We all like to know that. We all like to know that. Absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask Susan some questions here. So Susan, what led you to start Unstoppable Women in Business?
Ooh, that is such a good question. And I'm going to try to make it as brief as possible, because I could start with, well, I was born, and I won't go there. But
it's not doing Steve Martin here. And of course, we know that reference. I don't know if all of our audience will, but
I know exactly. Yeah. So I've been in sales forever, Brenda. Like I started over 20 years ago, and I sold in corporate America for a company called ADP, payroll processing company. I loved representing them because I loved what they did. And I was very proud of what I sold, and I found it very easy. And so I was so surprised when I went out on my own and became an entrepreneur. I was so surprised at the fact that selling yourself is different than selling for someone else. And so as I became accustomed and adjusted to mindset that I had to be in order to represent myself, I thought, wow, this is something people need help with. And so as I went out and started networking and I heard more and more women entrepreneurs saying, I just really do not like sales. It makes me feel sleazy. It makes me feel pushy. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. It doesn't have to be that way. So that's kind of how I got started based on just my experience of the transition myself. It helps that I also run a sales research company as one of the businesses that I run that does a lot of work in understanding what behaviors and why people are successful when they are selling. So I kind of packaged it all up and said, well, who better to help than other women business owners to become someone who just is comfortable and can create connected, authentic conversations using something that I worked to learn myself. So that's what got me here where I am.
Well, and I love that because I would agree with Susan as well. My sister often says, I could sell, ice to an Eskimo and shit to a cowboy but when it's you,
yes,
when you're the product, and I think
different.
that I want to say it again so that people really hear it because it's valid. When you have a seasoned salesperson saying this, then you can give yourself a little bit of mercy and go, okay, I'm not the only one. Because it's not the selling that's the challenge. It's not the technique, the script, whatever you want to look at, the process. It's the whole fact of what the new product is.
It's absolutely true.
And it comes with attachment. That's the deal. You could be more objective, even if you are working for another company that you really love, you believe in, and you love the product, and it really serves people and people really need it type thing. It's different when it's you. It's different when it's your program. It's different. So I just really love that, it's kind of like, well, let's just let you know right off the bat, right? We're starting it off really good. You guys need to know that because it's not that. And then when it's you, and then you don't have confidence in selling or you don't have experience, like I would venture to say Susan's talking about selling that started when she started out of college type thing, I'm sure. But I would probably, like for myself, it started when I was a brownie in Girl Scouts. Right? I mean, we've been selling. I always say, if you want to learn how to sell, listen to your kids. Right? Because they don't take no for an answer and they overcome your objections when there's something that they want. Children are masterful at it. And you once were masterful at it. Just remember that.
You know what you just said brought to mind. I haven't said it in a long time, but listen, the format that I use to help people become comfortable and create connected conversations, it works when you're selling. But I always tell them, listen, this stuff works when you are influencing anyone in your life. Use this methodology when you're having a conversation with your partner or your husband. Use it when you're having conversations with your kids. Use it when you're trying to get something you want from a vendor, right? All selling is influencing. And so if you can learn how to create a conversation that connects you in a way that you can influence people, you literally can create a whole different life. It's a beautiful thing.
Exactly. It's that deal where she just mentioned like everywhere, because sales is an act of love and service. And so however you influence somebody, again, it is, what's the right word here? It's manipulation in a bad way when it's not a win-win. But when it's a win-win, which typically we're not asking somebody to do something that's not good for them or that they wouldn't benefit from, especially after you've had a conversation with them and you see where they're struggling or what they are lacking in their process. That's to not let them know how you can help them, because that's exactly what you're doing in sales. I'm sorry, I'm like
Exactly.
taking over here, but it's like Susan's like, yeah, what she's saying, yeah, what she's saying. So just do this program. There you go. But that's the thing. And I discovered something here recently, Susan, which is probably why I love to talk about sales as well. That's why I was like, I'm excited to be talking to Susan because I love to talk about sales. But I realized that there's a lot of things because of course what my package entails is a healing modality. So there were certain things that I had to look at because although it's very mainstream, that I realized that I had beliefs around, which is the beautiful thing about theta healing, because when I discover it, but then I have to be aware of it to discover it type thing, to be able to shift it. And of course, after doing it for almost 15 years, it's a little bit more digging. It takes a little, it's not like it's just, it comes out and shows itself like in the most obvious way, like it did when I first started for me. It's always obvious when I'm working with a client, but for me, I always say we're our hardest client. So I really had discovered that I just didn't want to inconvenience people. It's so interesting
Mm-hmm.
to work with me, to get a larger package with me. I just didn't, because again, my whole MO is to make people's lives easier. Right. So it's like, and it's like, okay, I had to do a little work around that, right? Because but it was so interesting that it came up because I've just had and the reason it was brought up for me is because I've been having a lot of people paying me in full for my programs here in the last 2 weeks. And it's kind of funny because it's not even been a conversation. They've just been doing it.
Interesting.
And I've been like, okay, I've done my job, I've done what
your
I
work.
needed to do to say to them and, given them some options and they've all chosen to be full. And I've been like, okay, what do I need to look at here? Because, again, I've figured out something apparently, but always looking to see what else needs to happen. So why do you think, because I think we've kind of covered this a little bit, but why do you think that women have a natural aversion to selling for the most part?
Yeah, you did touch on it a little bit. I believe there's probably 3 main factors. And the first one goes back to how you were nurtured or how you grew up. So it goes back to way back when you were young and you were told, now listen, honey, be quiet. Don't be aggressive. You got to, listen. But good kids are seen and not heard. Don't brag. Don't be boastful, right? So many things are in our DNA, even from before we were born, it's in our DNA that
Oh, you've inherited it for sure. And I promise
how a lady,
if your parents said it to you, somebody said it to them, right?
Exactly. So we have to listen for that voice in our head and lovingly say to it, that's not really true. That's a belief that I don't really think benefits me any longer. And it's okay. It's okay to, like we said at the beginning around the bio, it's okay if somebody's talking about you and it sounds like, hey, I've done something in this world. It's okay. So that's the first thing is the nurturing aspect of where it comes from. And then this is something that I just talked about on my podcast. In sales, there's a feminine energy and a masculine energy to sales. And so when we are being sold to as women, let's just imagine being in a car dealership or possibly a furniture showroom or something like that, where there's a very aggressive male who's like, come on, sweetie, let's get you in this ride. What is it going to take to get, and it's like sleazy and it's pushy and it's not connected. Like we experience that. And because as a woman, we are very empathetic and very like sensitive. We all of a sudden say, I don't want to do that to somebody else. Now, that's what our perspective now is on selling, is that it has to be masculine energy and aggressive. And that's not true, but that's what we experience. And that's what gets into our minds is we don't want to be that person. So those are 2 of the primary things that I see happening as it comes along with us from our nurturing phase. It's also what we're exposed to. The third one is something that every single one of us has at the core of our souls, unfortunately, unless we do a lot of work with people like Brenda to get rid of it. It's the I'm not good enough. That's that self-judgment where everything leads down that rabbit path. I'm afraid that they're not going to want what I have. I'm afraid that I'm not good enough to do what I'm selling. I'm afraid I'm not worth the money that I'm charging. It's all of these fears that literally, if you peel the onion away, comes back to that root. I'm not good enough. I mean, it's an epidemic within us. If you're not doing work on that, you're definitely going to have a hard time selling. So those are kind of the three things that I see most often in the clients that I work with.
And it's so funny because I just had this conversation with a client last week where she was talking about the outcome in working with a client of hers. And I said, well, their results aren't your responsibility. She went, literally,
What?
this was her reaction. She went, I mean, I saw like synapses, like change paths in her brain. I said, you just can only do what you can do and deliver what you deliver, knowing that it's in your zone of genius.
Yes.
And it's up to your client to do what they do with it. And so that's why, and that was to me, and it was so funny because it's a group program that I have, and everybody else was like, yeah, the results aren't yours. Of course, these are these are all people who have implemented Theta Healing into their program. And this one gal was like, she also knows Theta Healing and she's implementing it with herself. And so she was just like, oh my gosh. I said, oh, that's a whole nother set of freedom here.
It is. It is.
And I think I've gotten good practice at it because I often say that if you want to be confirmed and validated for what you do for a living, don't become a Theta healer. There's a spoiler alert, because when people have the sessions, it's as if it's always been. So I just know I've done my job. Or I've done what I said I would deliver, so to speak. And they may or may not recognize it, but they still get the results. It doesn't really matter. So it's really allowed me to be in that objective place. Like when people say to me, like, how do you deal with this? A lot of my students and my clients that know Theta Healing, they're like, how do you do this when they say this? And I'm like, well, I just change what would obligate me to have an attachment to what they're saying or how they're perceiving it. And that's with anything, right, guys? But I've had to do it with Theta Healing, but that's with anything. And when Susan is talking about that, I'm not enough, really that comes from even deeper. Because I always say that I'm not enough is a symptom. It's not truly what's going on, but it's how it shows up. And so for most people, they're looking at their worthiness, which again, it's something deeper than that. Everybody, I hear this all the time too, Susan. Well, I'm not making money because I'm not worthy. Yeah, that's not how it works. Just spoiler alert, that's not how it works. So, but what's lovely is that when you step out of your comfort zone, say you work with somebody like Susan, because I'm challenged in sales. I'm challenged in how I view sales, how I approach sales, then your stuff's going to come up.
Exactly. The way that I put it a lot of times, Brenda, is it's like hiding the peas under the mashed potatoes. Okay. So everybody wants mashed potatoes. They love them. They don't necessarily want to eat their peas. But if you serve up the mashed potatoes, what you're going to find underneath there are those nuggets that are literally what you really need most. And that is I'm not enough. It's like the mashed potatoes. It's like, talk to me about how I can be enough. Well, underneath there's some nuggets there that have just got to be dove into.
Well, and again, I love to do spoiler alerts. So here's another one for you. If you want to know what you need to work on, be an entrepreneur.
Good golly, yes.
And that's the thing. If you want to be able to grow your business and up-level your business, then we have to do things that we are uncomfortable with, that will have you step out of your comfort zone. So what I find, Susan, a lot with my clients is that it's not just discomfort, it's terror. So I can change that for them instantaneously. So then they can apply what they've learned, what they need to learn. So finally say yes to work with somebody to help them in that area that they're challenged with, which for a lot of people, it's not like people wake up and go, oh, I know how to do sales. It's not how it works.
No, it's
So
not.
now some of us have natural dispositions. We do things naturally, which are
Mhm.
beautiful. And maybe you're denying those because of how you see it. Like I loved how Susan talked about that feminine and masculine. I mean, everybody thinks of sales and they immediately think of a used car salesman and a
Mhm.
plaid, polyester leisure suit. Again, dating myself, that is just, there's something wrong with the car and they're wanting to sell to me. And
Mhm.
that's typically what you will find. What's so very interesting, again, because as a woman, it's what you're naturally good at. Sales is about listening. And women are amazing listeners.
Mhm.
It's again what most of us need help with is then what do you do with the information that you've just listened to? How do you respond to that? And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be that hard when you've learned it. So here's the next question. Honestly, it's like I haven't read the questions ahead of time, which Susan's like, could you just read them? But it's, just following the whole flow of it. It's talking about people having fun selling and how does that happen. So now she gets to just piggyback off of here's the opening for you, Susan. I've just done that for you.
Mhm. How to have fun
Okay,
when you're
take
selling?
it away.
Oh my gosh. Hey, listen, the thing that women do best is create relationship with each other, right? So we are natural at creating community and helping people. And it's so funny that literally you were just talking about us as being good listeners. We're naturally good listeners, but in a sales situation, sometimes we listen to the chatter in our mind too much. I call it the monkey chatter. So, how can you hear your person? How can you connect with someone and really truly understand them and be able to be in service to them when you've also got this monkey chatter going on in your mind that's going, oh no, I don't think they're going to like what I have. I don't think they're going to think of this. I don't think they're going to like me. I don't think they're going to think my product is worth it or my program is worth it. That monkey chatter is, if you're listening to that, you're not listening to the person in front of you. And so the way to have fun in sales is to lovingly tell that brain, I'm not listening to you right now. You got nothing for me right now. I'm listening to Brenda B. Bailey because I care about her. And all I need to know is what is her deepest desire and how can I help her get her deepest desire. Now that is fun because that's who we are as a species. We are people who want to nurture and help people. And when you can drop all the chatter and all the silliness around the edges and just be there, just be present and ask people like questions that help you understand their needs, man, the rest of it just becomes so much fun. It's no pressure.
And I love this because honestly, I don't typically talk about like what I can do for people during,
Mhm.
because this is Susan's interview, guys, but it makes me laugh because I
Mhm.
go, okay, that's what theta healing does, is it takes you out of
Mhm.
your head. In
Mhm.
sales, we got to be in our heart. We have to be in our
Mhm.
knowing. We have to be able to hear them, but not with our head. We
Right.
just have to be able to hear them because people also know that as well. I had to laugh. I bought a car this past fall and went to two different dealerships. The first one I felt, and of course I'll just say this, I don't have anything, I was open to it, but I was dealing with a man. And I felt like I was in that Google alert, everything wrong that you do not want to have happen when you go to a dealership. I really was looking around going, am I being punked here? Because I just know better. And as consumers, because of Google and because of the internet, we're more educated, which doesn't always make them happy. I'm just going to tell you that right now. And that's also what allows you to be an even better deliverer of information to people while you're having a sales conversation, because you are aware of what you overcome and what you offer. So
Mhm.
people know what's out there, they know, and then you get to know, like, this is what I can do, and this is the difference that I make. Here you go. So it was funny because I just had to step away. Like I just looked at them and said, I have a meeting in an hour, which was true. I said, I've got to get home. and I've got to get back to the office and I need to leave. And then I waited about another month before I, wanted to take that back on again, and ended up going to a different dealership and was dealing with a female.
Mm.
And I saw all her awards in her office. I saw that she'd been working for the company for a long time, which a lot of things, but these are things that I look at as a person, just have a sales background and who I'm dealing with, and knowing it was the last day of the month. I negotiated with her saying, because again, I'm an educated consumer going, and I know how it works, saying it's the last day of the month. If I show up, will I be able to get this price? Well, again, online and doing it online makes it so much before you just actually have to even go to the dealership now. And so I'd negotiated a lot of things before I even stepped in. And at the very end, when she's like showing me everything, how everything works in my car that I just purchased, I just looked at her and I said, so did you make your goal? Did you make your quota? Because I know how that works.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yes. She goes, Brenda, I didn't make any money off this deal, but I am the number one person this month. And I said, because again, knowing these kind of things, it's like, and especially in a situation like that, I know that either they need to make their numbers or they need to make their money. And if they make their numbers, they do make their money type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that it would be beneficial for her to have me show up like at 6 p.m. on a Saturday night type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And not that it was because I really was tired and didn't want to go, but she was like, if I can do this, this, and this, will you come? And I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
she's doing the post close on me, so let's go ahead and go with it. And I often say, once you understand sales, you appreciate what people do and what they offer and how well they do it. The easiest
That's the
person,
truth.
another spoiler alert, the easiest person to sell is a salesperson, by
It's
the
so
way.
true.
If
It's so
you
true.
do it well, if you are good.
Mm-hmm.
Not, they will be the first one to let you know that.
It's
So
always fun when you're out in a situation like that and people will say to me, so what do you do? It's like, I'm a sales trainer. And they're like, oh God, you're probably
oh, I'm
evaluating me.
sure
I'm like, yeah, I am.
they start to see the little bead of sweat happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
train negotiations.
so Susan, if you could give people one word of advice about becoming good at sales, what would it be?
Ooh, all right. It's going to follow along with our conversation here, because I do believe that the primary reason people don't enjoy sales is because they feel pressure. It's like, I need to do this right, or I won't get the results, or I need the sales. Whenever you hear the word need come into your mind, you know that what's happening is you're putting pressure on yourself. And so you will react to that pressure by creating a very tense energy, and that completely disconnects you from people. So the thing that I tell people all the time is just remember this one thing. If you put out value to the world, and you just do it with love and with kindness, and you just keep putting that energy out there of, I've got this amazing gift I want to share, I just want to share this amazing value with you, it's not critical that the value comes back in exchange from that single person, right? It's more, you put it out there and it will come back to you tenfold. It will come back to you tenfold. It may not be from a place you expect, but if you're open and abundant and not in a place of scarcity, sales can be so much fun because you are just doing what you were born to do. You're giving love, you're giving value, you're putting it out there, and you will be open to receiving it back. I know this sounds crazy coming from a sales coach, but I'm not someone who believes that that you've got a scorecard, in essence, that every single time you sell, you're going to have a return on that. It's bigger than that. It's just much bigger than that.
Well, and that's the thing too, Susan, and I love what you're saying, because it's the law of reciprocity.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens for people is they do one of two things. Either they don't give enough information, enough value, so that people can say yes, or they give it all away before the person can give them any money.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fine line in between.
Mm-hmm.
And they both come from that not enough. There's not
Yes.
enough, not them being enough, but there's not enough. A
Right.
lot of times I find one of the most common, and we'll do that one today, beliefs that people have is that if they make money, it takes money away from somebody else. Right. So if
Crazy.
I do well, it takes away, it will affect somebody else.
Mm.
And when there's a plenty in the world, that's not how it works.
There's so much for everyone.
Right. And there's no such thing as competition.
No.
Because that's the thing. Yes, I talk to people about sales as well. I don't have a sales program, but I talk to people about a lot of things because they're going to come to me with where they're challenged. So, in all aspects of business, having been an entrepreneur for almost 29 years, I get it. I could do it. And I typically know what beliefs, what traumas, what non forgiveness needs to shift around that. But a sales conversation comes from practice. You won't get good at it's like anything.
That's exactly right.
You won't get good at it unless you so I always tell people, I'm sure Susan says this, just treat it like a game. I think that that's the biggest thing is that people often they've got their monkey mind. So you've got a salesperson who's got a monkey mind. And so they're listening to respond instead of listening to hear.
Mm-hmm. That's the truth. That's the truth.
So we can tell that, even though you're probably like going, you're right. Like, oh my God, I never thought of it like that. And it's one of our basic wants, right? One of our basic desires. We just want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people have filters, they can't hear it. Sometimes we have to approach it in a different way so that it can be. And that's the beautiful thing about having a conversation. But any conversation that you're having with somebody, like Susan said, is some type of sales conversation because there's something that can happen, whether it's planting a seed, asking if they'd like to get started with you, and seeing whether or not what the objection would be, if there is one, and then how to handle that. But it's ideal just in that conversation, you're just putting it out in the world.
Exactly. You know what? I think you just brought something to mind. I think that if I see a mistake, because I listen to a lot of sales conversations, I literally have my clients record their conversations so that I can just provide feedback. What's going well, where I saw they could have done something that could have changed the outcome, whatever it might be. So I listen to a lot of sales conversations. And the number one thing that I hear more often than not is because we're a little bit anxious about making the offer. That's the area that it gets just a little, people really get a lot of chatter going on in their mind when it comes time to making the offer. It's almost like they're rushing into it, Brenda, where if they just slow down and ask better questions, they would have the person literally unfolding in front of them and become more open and receptive to what they have to offer. So I'll just give you an example. When I hear someone say, let's say I'm listening to a weight loss coaches, a weight loss coaches call, and they ask, hey, why, glad you're here today. How can I help you? What attracted you to me in essence? And the client's like, yeah, I've been struggling with weight. Got, the last 15 pounds I want to lose, have had trouble with it. I tried this and that. And they're like, boom. Well, listen, I've got this great program that can help you. And here's what it does. So without really going deeper into the why, they're ready to hop into the area of the conversation that they're most comfortable with. And the problem there is the first thing someone says to you is really coming from almost a guarded place. They're willing to tell you a little bit, but they know they're there because you want to enroll them into something. So they're a little guarded, right? If you hold back and you don't talk about what you do and you don't make any kind of recommendation and you just keep asking questions, how does that show up for you? What problems is that causing for you? Every time they answer you, find another question that will reveal just a little bit more. And it's almost like peeling the layers of an onion. And what you're doing is you're having them sell themselves on the fact that they need to do something, that the pain that's involved in with this problem is more than they want to deal with anymore. And when you finally get to that place, people buy on emotion and they justify with logic. When you get to that place where they are emotionally in tune with what the problem is kind of causing for them, that is when you've earned the right to say, I hear you. I understand what you're talking about. And I think I might have something that will help you get to the other side of this. Now, that's a totally different conversation than pushing something at someone. It's exactly what you were saying before. It's about listening with intent to understand so that when the time is right, you can offer the gift of the value that you can give to them. That's a whole different situation. And it feels good when you do it.
Well, and it's also that thing what Susan just said. It's like, don't steal a kiss until you've gotten to know them, right? Like you
Yes,
can't
exactly.
tell them how you're going to do something for them. They're just like, hey, we just met, boundaries here. So they are just feeling, giving you information and seeing if you know how to respond or what's going on or what makes you different. Having a conversation, is what will make you different. And I have to tell you, so we're going to do a little work on this because I could just feel it in the atmosphere, right? When people said she listens to our sales conversation, it is the most valuable thing that you will ever have somebody do for you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I was actually I just finished up a program and I was listening to a lawyer talk about how she couldn't get people to close, right? It was really interesting. And in my mind, I just thought, oh, she needs to record a conversation so that somebody can help her. That's like immediately what I thought, because she's just not getting to where she needs to be. She's not understanding. She's a lawyer. She's not, that's not her deal. So that's the thing. It's so incredibly funny. I always love to tell the story. So I'm dating myself here. So in college, I sold long distance service on the phone, right? So I was a telemarketer for a long distance service. Yes, that actually existed, kids, in case y'all didn't realize that. Depending on somebody's like, what? It just comes with your plan. No, it did not. So there was a point, little history, right? For some of those who are younger, there was a point where we only got long distance like in one way, and then it became a monopoly. And then all of a sudden it opened up for other, they ruled it to be against the law, and then they opened it up, and then there were a ton of long distance services. So I was working my way in college. So I took a job and was selling long distance service. And there would be this one guy, I swear to God, when you think about like the sleazy like salesman, and this was early 80s. So he had, it was kind of off of the disco era. He had the, shirt opened up to the middle, hairy chest with the gold chain and kind of that satiny, sheeny shirt on. And he would always show up late. He got to sit up front, like he got like a special desk, right? And I'd be like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And, you had to call, again, legally, you had to call a supervisor over to have them confirm that the people on the phone did indeed want the service, right? Like, or say you weren't just saying that they wanted it, that they agreed to it, that they would, it would, because you were changing their phone line type thing. So I just noticed, so you had to like put your hand up and have somebody come over. And I always noticed his hand because he faced me, right? So all of us are not facing each other. I'm seeing the back of somebody else's head, but he's like at a supervisor's desk and he's facing me. And I thought, I always saw his hand going up. And I just thought, who is he? What is going on here? And so one day after work, I got invited to go for drinks, like with some of the supervisors and him. So I'm like 19, like I'm just a baby. I'm so young. And, we had a script that we had to follow. And so he looked at me. So we're at this bar, like across the street from where we work. And he leans into me and, he introduces himself to me and he goes, so you're pretty good. I went, oh, well, I thank you. And he goes, I see your hand go up a lot. You're good. I was like, oh, thank you. And he goes, so I'm going to give you some feedback, right? So if somebody says that to you, especially if you see them like that they're good, it's like you just sit back. Like I learned that a long time ago. I was like, yes. He's like, he goes, I'm going to give you a tip. I said, I would love that. And he said to change one word in the script. Like it went from, it was something like you do not have to sign any contracts, because that was kind of one of the things. He goes, just put there's, I don't even remember what he told me to do. He goes, saying contract in the script really throws people off and it scares them. He goes, so just change that word. He doubled my sales. And again, I had to be willing to say, I'm going to take this advice, right? This was free advice that he was just, and he did it because he thought I was a hard worker and he saw that I was good. I wasn't just like some, young kid who was just showing up and just, filling a space or whatever. I needed to make money and we made commissions and bonuses. So I needed this. I was putting myself through school and I learned so much. I mean, I'm talking about this. This happened a long time ago, folks. And I still remember it because it was such a valuable lesson to me, which is why you want somebody to hear your conversation, because it's a matter of saying it in just a different way, asking it in a question, changing one word that you have no idea. And I learned so much from that. One, I always learned to follow the script given. Mm-hmm. And if somebody that is doing better than you says, change word. And I did that. And I thanked him. In fact, the next time we went out together, as a group, which was probably within a couple of weeks, I bought him a drink and I thanked him for giving me that information. And they had no idea that I was just like 19. They thought I was like 21. The drinking age was 21 and that was okay. But yeah, no, I was just so happy. And these are the kind of things people don't, you can figure it out on your own in a lot of different areas, guys. But, and again, it's like anything, because people are going to do the same thing to you. They're going to vet you. That's what they're doing when you're having a conversation with them. They're checking you out and who you are. It's how we do it with everybody. It's why I have Susan on here, because I like Susan. And Susan actually gave me a tip. I met her in a meeting. She was like, can I give you some feedback? She'll tell you. I was like, yes, of course. I always, again, you can do whatever you want to with feedback, but, and I always appreciate when somebody asks first. I attempt to do that as well. Sometimes if I'm just in that, what do you call it? Intuitive place, sometimes it just kind of rolls out of my mouth. And I'm not in that present moment to say, can I give you some feedback? Whoops. But if somebody's willing to do that, especially in an area of expertise that will affect your bottom line, just say yes. No harm, so let somebody listen to your conversation. And I think also too that people think, and that's something else will change, Susan, is that people are afraid to get constructive criticism because they're afraid that they're going to be judged. Yeah. And feedback is constructive criticism versus judgment. Exactly. I think that it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where we're all so sensitive to how in the past we've been treated. And so it's something that you can grow within yourself by saying, like Brenda said, if someone is willing to share with you and they have earned the right because they know what they're doing, then it's not personal. It's just something that you can grow from and learn from. And, there just have to be a trust element there. And that's why I reserve it usually for my clients who know and trust me. It's part of the most powerful work we can do. She was speaking to a group, so it was a little different. I was part of an audience. I did, but that's permission. The thing too is that I could have judged this guy, like, who is this John Travolta, throwback, and what does he know? But I was smart enough to know, like, I see his hand go up a lot to get for sales. So I'm going to hear what he has to say. And, people don't just drop out of the sky doing this. It's typically, we reach a certain point, you have to invest where your weaknesses are. Even if you don't want to do it, you have to at least know what somebody that you're going to hire to do it. I think that's another thing, probably Susan would agree, is that people want to avoid doing sales. So they hire a salesperson.
No, never. Never. I'm sorry. Unless your organization is large enough that you can nurture and really, really, really work to have them understand your value, I don't believe in outsourcing sales. I just don't, because no one understands or can communicate your value better than you can. So if you're a solopreneur or a team of one or two people, you have to be good at it yourself before you can train someone else to be good at it. I'm sorry, I interjected an opinion there.
Oh no, I knew she was going to say that. I opened the way for her because it's that thing. It's like, stop avoiding and figure out, again, Theta Healing will help you shift it very quickly so that it can be a non-issue, but just to be able to move forward. Again, this is part, and I don't think that people exactly wrap their heads around, and unfortunately we have to wrap our heads around. These are things that prevent you from up-leveling your business and expanding your influence, your pocketbook, however you look at that. And that's what's so important. And it's why I'm interjecting and asking questions and letting Susan just kind of give her opinion in, because these are things that I always say, you got to hear, you got to know. So again, if you know somebody that would benefit from this conversation and things that were learned from Susan, tag them, share it, comment on it, because that's what's going to allow you. I work a lot like in programs like Susan's, and I love working with sales organizations because a lot of time people will say it's mindset that is holding them back and being able to do sales. And you often say, you can't solve the problem in the same way that it was created. It's always created in our mind. So when we're looking at mindset, we're looking at that solution that's not going to be as effective, as efficient, and as quick, which again, is what I love about Theta Healing, is it goes beyond the brain, beyond the conscious and the subconscious, and makes changes on a cellular level. So when you get that, be seen, not heard, and that your parents got that from their parents, these are things that are inherited. And I'm going to promise you, as much as you don't want to do it, somehow you're going to pass it on to your kids. You may not see it, but there's an energy behind it. So I often say, like, when you work on yourself, you're working on your children. Like, it's less for them to have to work on, because already they're going to go to therapy over something that you said to them anyways. But you know what I'm saying. So it's like, so it's just less. I always say it's less sessions they have to have with them. So that's the thing that ends up being wonderful, because then when you can have that clarity, you can be objective, you can just show up, you can be detached. And a lot of people find that detachment a bad thing. And it's like, no, as an entrepreneur, it's what you need in order to be able to. I've had some sales conversations in the last 2 weeks that I just stepped out of my own way and just did it intuitively. And they were fun. Because right. I just kind of went, oh my gosh, this was somebody that I would not have closed before. And not because I'm bad, I'm really good at sales, but it was just like, oh no, I just didn't want to inconvenience them. And so once I figured out that piece, I was like, oh yeah, let's do that. So Susan has said a lot of beautiful things that we're going to work on. Yay, yay, yay. So keep in mind, like I said, we're going to be changing on the DNA level, on that cellular level. You do have to say yes out loud. The reason, and again, if you're in a coffee shop or you've got the family around, I'm not saying you have to scream it or anything. You just have to say it. It's an important piece. It allows your brain to know that you want to have it changed. It allows the universe to know that. It also allows your divine power, which is all very important. And because we are on social media, you got to put it in the comments too. So whether you're watching this live or you're watching on the replay, this will work. That's the beautiful thing, which is why we get a lot of replays. We get a lot of replays on these because people know that. So that's what makes it also great as well. So one, we're just going to make sure that we do have the 4 basic beliefs, which are: I want an instant healing, I deserve an instant healing, and instant healing is possible, and it is possible for Theta healing to work for my highest and best good. So if you would like those, just say yes out loud. We didn't hear her, but she did say yes.
Yes, yes.
Let's change the obligation, which means that we don't have a choice, that we are to be seen and not heard. Let's change what prevents us from being in that feminine energy of sales. So again, what that does is it allows us to know what it feels like, sounds like, that it's possible, that it's safe, which then when you do a program like Susan's, you can just step into it without having to be, like she said, in that monkey mind. Let's change that your client's results are your responsibility. Let's also get that definition of need and want so that we know the difference. Let's change the obligation to put pressure on ourselves, and for whatever reason. So a lot of times it's perfectionism, it's scarcity, it's oh my God, it's a million things. But let's just change that. And we're going to do a second round. So if you would like those, just say yes out loud.
Yes, yes.
Let's also change the obligation to view the world in scarcity, that there's not enough. Let's change what prevents us from being in the flow of the law of reciprocity. Let's change the obligation. Get those divine definitions and know the difference between feedback and judgment. And then also being able to know the difference between judgment and constructive criticism, or let's just do criticism and constructive criticism. So if you would like those, just say yes out loud.
Yes. Yes.
Nice. And again, this is available for replay. So if you thought that these were some good ones, oh, so-and-so needs that, tag them. They'll get this work if they do the replay and if they say yes out loud and yes in the comments. It's kind of magical. I love this. That's what I love about doing videos, is that people can still get the same effect, because again, our schedules don't always allow us to be able to be live. And this is one of those deals when you don't have to. Unfortunately or fortunately, our audience comes at the end here when we're not live, Susan. So typically with my audience. So Susan, I think you have something free for us, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So a lot of the things that I believe in my heart will help you have more fun and be more successful, I've included in a 1-hour masterclass that's free. It's called Getting to Yes Faster, and it's available at gettingtoyesfaster.com. There you go. So it's easy to get, it's easy to go through. There's some worksheets in there, and there's an invitation at the end that if you would like to connect with me and give me your pitch, I will give you feedback, and constructive feedback.
Right.
Goods, which doing well, and where you have some opportunity. Exactly.
Yeah.
Where you have an opportunity to get it a little bit better. So
and I think, it's really beautiful, because I also have I have a colleague who helps people with their pitches to angel investors. It's just valuable to be able to get people's feedback in their area that they know. And our masterclass, I'm going to tell you, you're going to have some ahas with it.
It's a lot of good stuff. Yeah, it's
And
a lot of good stuff.
then be able to take the next step and understand, get some constructive feedback. Invaluable, guys. And keep in mind, the getting to yes faster, I also have it in the post as well, so that you don't have to be looking for it, or you replay this or rewind this to be able to get that. If there's the link, so you'll be able to find it. And we always do this. Like I said, we're starting in May. We're going to be doing it every other week, but we're meeting next week. And I am same time, same place, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Central Daylight Savings Time. My featured guest will be Stephanie L. Shaw, and we'll be doing the critical shifts needed to turn your pain into your purpose. So I always have great conversations here. Susan, I'm just going to ask, because we've just got a few minutes, anything else you want to add? Anything else you feel like that people need to know? Any other pearls of wisdom you want to just up on us here?
You know what? I know I've got so many things I can share. I would almost like to point people out to my YouTube channel. It's Unstoppable Women in Business. There are 2-minute sales tip videos that literally how to network better, how to change your mind around what it takes to become an entrepreneur. There's all kinds of stuff. I'm putting one out there this week that I like a lot, and I'll be curious to hear your feedback on this, Brenda. I had one of my clients say to me, how do I make a 2-minute video in under 2 hours? I just need to know that. I'm like, oh, that's easy. So I'm going to be putting that out later this week, because I think that it goes back to what we were talking about. People are so tangled up in their minds around being perfect and putting things out into the world and being afraid of being judged, that it takes them so long to put out quality content. And all I want to say to people is this: you've got so much to offer to the world. Please give it to them, and don't worry about the package you're putting it in. If you were to get a present from me, Brenda, and it was wrapped in brown paper package, right? Brown paper packaging.
Right. The craft paper. Yeah.
You opened it up and it was exactly what you wanted. Would you say, well, I don't want this. It came in brown paper, Susan. Come on. Why didn't you put it in?
Susan, thank you for wrapping it, because I would have just handed it to her without wrapping.
I love it. That's even better.
Right?
So I think that's why people get hung up on putting their content out there. Stop judging it. Stop judging yourself. Give your gift to the world, and it will come back to you tenfold. Don't hold back.
Absolutely. And this is what I find too, Susan, is that people don't realize, because of who you are and what you know, it is human nature that you think that everybody knows what you do.
Oh, it's so true.
They don't. So the 2-minute video is invaluable to be able to help them understand, one, what you know, and two, what they don't know, which is always very helpful for them. And I have a good video coach too, if you need one. That's the thing. We have all these people that can help us to be able to get where we need to get. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm looking at Susan's lighting and going, man, her lighting is so much better than mine. But you know what? Here it is, right? Because y'all aren't on this to look at me and my lighting. That's the deal. And I don't even like to have my picture taken, much less be on a video. This is not my comfort zone. I don't wake up in the morning. I mean, there are some people who love it. They're selfies. They love to take selfies. They love to do this. That is not me. And it's a part of just doing it. So I used to do, I started off just doing like little lives, like 2 minutes, putting it on my YouTube channel, and then moved into these co-lives. Because there was a part of me that was like, well, I don't really want a podcast. And I'm like, oh my God, I love this format for a podcast. And it's something that I will look at. But I never really thought, why would I want to interview somebody? Because I know great people who have great information. That's why. And I can do a little work around the tips and tricks that they're giving you, the advice, the mentoring, the awarenesses, and how we get in our way. So what what makes that so much better. I have people who like share the crap. I'll just say it, share the crap out of my videos and these interviews because it's so easy to say yes. It's so easy to have things changed. And that's part of my deal, is to make people aware, Susan, that it doesn't have to be hard. Save your brain, work through the things of the new things that you're learning, like how to sell yourself. That takes some practice. Sales takes practice. You know, not, and again, when we say practice, I'm not talking about like for the Olympics or anything. We're just talking, you have, you know, you've got to do it more than once. But if you can't even get there, then you're going to be that person that thought it was a nice idea to be an entrepreneur, just saying.
Yes, unfortunately. I like to say, use this metaphor. What you and I do are like a Reese's peanut butter cup. Like, you getting your peanut butter in my chocolate, and I get my chocolate in your peanut butter.
And we know that reference. For those of you who don't know that, I understand what Susan's saying. We've collided with our peanut butter and chocolate.
We have. It's a little bit of skills and it's a little bit of mindset and beyond, right? And you got to put the whole package together, and then you're like, dang, this is fun. That's the answer to the question.
Like Susan said, when you learn to sell and sell yourself, there are many areas of your life. How we do anything is how we do everything. Just like with ThetaHealing, when you've changed a belief, a trauma, a non-forgiveness on a cellular level, it changes a whole lot of areas that you didn't even realize needed a little bit of shifting, because we are not aware that it can be different until it is. And then we see the difference and understand, like, oh, got it. So it's an easy way. Susan, thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure, Brenda. Thank you for letting me hang out.
Information with our audience.
Pleasure.
It was definitely a banter that I enjoyed very much.
Good. Let me know if I can help you anymore.
We'll see you next week. And so again, you know how to get a hold of Susan. The link is in the post. So say yes, do it, guys.